Yo, what's up guys? Another video about dungeon teams. And in this case, I often get the question saying, what kind of dungeon teams do you actually run? Because you made a lot of videos, you made a lot of like speed teams, free-to-play teams, somewhere in between teams, safe teams, not that safe teams. And most of them I try to get safe, but however, not always are they super safe. So I'm gonna go through all of the teams that I use right now. Do keep in mind that all of my teams are currently not ruined except for one. That's just the way that I play. I showed that in the last video as well, which I will probably put as the first link in the description of explaining how I recommend people to farm and what kind of dungeons I recommend people to farm. I think it's a pretty good video on that one. But this one is going to be more about showing, okay, what are the dungeon teams that I run? Why do I choose to run that over maybe a faster team? Or just in any kind of shape or way, like why do I choose that kind of team specifically? And I will also show that based on like videos. So I will showcase the video for all of those and then also put all of the links of those videos in the description down below here as well. If you want to see all of the videos that I have in like playlist style, that kind of stuff, I recommend to join the Discord. Link will also be in the description. And from there, you just can find the playlist in the Dungeon Guide archive and the Video Guide archive. In there, the playlist, you can just find like all of the dungeon teams out there. So these are currently my record runs. However, these are not particularly like the way that I actually specifically run them. Like for some reason, I don't even have a record on this. Hilarious. But yeah, for these are not all exactly the teams that I run. So I will go over these 6 dungeons and then I will also talk about the R5. I don't think I will specifically talk about these, but I can quickly go through them, what I use on them right now. It's a little bit like fast, but it's not like crazy. Yeah, I'll go over those as well. So first of all, we're gonna start with the normal dungeons with Giants. The Giants team that I use is the version where Teshar has the best rune quality out there for damage setups. And then the other units all have triple fire. Well, this was a derpy run from there. But this is, for me, I would say the best possible run that you can do without having a Zerath. And I think only a Zerath version would make this possibly any faster. You do need a Debra for this one, though. If you don't have a Debra, I would probably put a Lin in there or a Luna or anything like that. I'm not entirely sure which one of the two would be best. Probably I would go either like Lin or Shaman. Shaman does make it a lot safer. Like, if you do see some fails from time to time, I think a Shaman is probably the one that would make it the safest way, and just adding that few percent extra is definitely nice. But this is the team that's based on Teshar is pretty much one-shotting everything. It one-shots the golem in the wave, so it doesn't have an issue with that. And it also one-shots the mid-boss. So that is just making it a lot faster. This runs about, I've seen like 22-second average going up to like 24-second average for a run of 30. And it feels probably 1 in every like 200 or something run. So it's definitely a very safe run. And I definitely do like this team a lot. And this is also the team that I mainly farm because the main dungeon that I farm is Giants. So this is my Dragons team. This is also the Dragons team that I would use if I run it properly. It does not have the Debra in there. The Debra version that I did showcase is something that I might use if I were to run it at a pace where I just want to get the fastest time possible. Then that thing is like, it's going like 20-second average. This thing is going like 23, 24-second average, which is more of a obtainable run. It's a lot more doable to get those kind of runes compared to the Debra version. Debra version is absolutely the hardest one to rune. However, I don't really like this dungeon in the first place because you're always bound to shine at just missing armor breaks on the final boss, and therefore your run is going to fail. Also, I don't really farm any dragons at all, except when we get the events where you can say, like, I only get fire runes from dragons. At that point, I think dragons is definitely high value. We also did have that event at some point that you could select one rune that has, like, the double drop rate for, like, a long time. Because the ones that we can only select, like, one rune type that was, like, just an hour or, like, 2-3 times an hour. We also had that event, I'm not entirely sure, I think it was the 9th anniversary event or something along that time, where we could select, okay, we get double drop rate on one of the dungeons. Back at that time, I actually did do it on dragons. I was running this with dragons as well. Did see quite some fails here because you just have like straight up like a 2% fail rate, like 2.25% fail rate from that. However, would I do that again if that event would pop up? Probably not, but I would say it's definitely not bad to run dragons during events. But for me, dragons running normally is really not that interesting. But if I would run it, I would use this. Then the Necro team, I run this. However, I do have a Awakened Abigail right now. Awakened Abigail is definitely fine right now. It never will do the S3. They buffed the AI to the point where it only uses an S3 where it actually should be moving. This is the team with the bat. Some people did mention it to me. Why were you not using the bat like in your previous video? Because you were saying like you used the bat team. Are you not using it anymore? Is it not safe enough or anything like that? Now, the thing is, at the previous video, I was actually super low on crystals. And the moment I'm low on crystals, I just want to farm something slowly. And for this team, I would have to rerun. For the team that I use with the Shaman, I don't have to rerun. Like, that one is actually one of the few things that is generally ruined up most of the time. This one, I would have to rerun towards this specific team. And while having that specific team ruined, then this is absolutely the fastest way. This is the, I would say, also the safest way. I would say that I currently have a little bit better artifacts right now, especially on the star. At this point, I had a pretty weak star for my liking, at least. And that is definitely quite a bit better right now. So if I'm farming Necro, which is not often, I think it's just something I farm during events as well, because Necro is just something that's super slow on farming. But therefore, I also do kind of like Necro farming, because then I switch back to Necro the moment that I'm super low on crystals. That's the moment where I always start farming Necro. But then I'm looking at like 1 minute 10 runs on Necro, and then I would put the Shaman in there. It's slightly bit safer. I think the bad team is totally fine for safety nets and that kind of stuff. However, it is a slightly bit better on the Shaman. It's just a little bit safer, and I don't have to switch runes. That's the main thing. I don't have to switch runes. It's just one of those lazy things saying like, okay, I just want to farm something slow. Then I go to Necro. But besides it, don't really farm Necro. If I would farm it, it's the bad team. But then with the Abigail, that's awake. Spiritual Realm is actually a dungeon I do not farm at all. I literally just, I had to farm it because of the event. With the event, you can select that you can only get 5 runes. At that moment, I do really like the dungeon, but I think this dungeon absolutely has the worst of the worst drop tables. It's a very standard team. If you get the good runes to it, it runs pretty fast, but it's still like 28-second average or something. It's nothing like a crazy team. I did try a team with like a Clara and that kind of stuff, but that team in the end didn't really work out, and I noticed that the Astar is pretty much like super hard one-shotting everything. But I would say this dungeon in general is just not really that interesting to farm. It's just for 5 runes. Any of the other drop tables are just shit. Would be nice if they actually change it. That would be cool if they make an event where you could exclude like a few of the drop tables. Like, not necessarily say like I only get Vi or I only get Fight, but say like, okay, I exclude like 3 or 4 of the rune sets from a specific dungeon, and then you still get the other ones. Would be pretty cool for an event or something like that. Then this dungeon would become a lot more interesting as well. But until that time, I would not ever run this unless there's an event for this to run. My artifacts are kind of on point where I don't really need more artifacts, but if I would be running it, I would definitely be running it like this. I did also see some people, they replaced either the Sonya or the Patrick for a Bethany. It runs, I think, a little bit worse, but I think it still runs pretty fine. I definitely do think that the Sonya is the most important. The Patrick is, I would say, more replaceable than the Sonya. You could maybe also put the Bethany on the Liam slot, so there's definitely a few replacements over there. However, I would say that this team as a whole is just one of the best teams out there. I think this is also the fastest clear I could do. This was averaging like 18, 19 seconds, was crazy fast. It did fail from time to time, and that's just like if all of the units decide not to use their ignore defense skill, you don't have any armor break, you're bound to fail. So that's where it's a super nice team, but it's definitely bound to fail a few times here and there. Is that really bad? I wouldn't say it's that much of a big deal. Also, keep in mind, if you do use Bethany, you have to use a shield set somewhere, because Bethany needs 4 buffs to actually get her ignore defense to always ignore defense, because otherwise with 3 buffs it's just a 90%. So do keep in mind that you have to go with shield set somewhere. But I really did like farming this dungeon. However, I think for the most recent time, I don't really have to farm this all too often, because my artifacts on these are kind of fine. I would rather go for Steel Fortress probably than for Punish the Script at the moment. Because in Punish the Script, the only thing that I would be looking for is an attack type that has a lot of additional damage by speed. Were they to do an event where you could select, like, you get double drop rate in the attack type or something like that, then I might actually decide to farm some artifacts over even runes, because that part, the moment that we had that event, we didn't have the abyss for the artifact dungeons yet. And I definitely do think that in PC especially, you mostly care for attack. Like, you care for attack, like that's probably like 50-60% of your units are attack type. Then there's probably like 25-30% that are supports, and then I would say there's probably 8% that are HP, and then 2% that are defense. It's something along the lines for like that for me. So definitely getting a lot more attack types or support types in is very useful, but you keep getting all of those defense types and then the weird ass rolls on like recovery skill 3 on an attack. Where? So yeah, don't really like to farm this dungeon too much, or at least I think it's harder to get like the good artifacts in. But if we were to up the rate of getting the attack types, then it would definitely be nice. For Steel Fortress using this team, however, if I run this right now, I wouldn't be using Ken, I would be using Igar in that position. It pretty much runs the same way, very similar style. The only thing is that you're gonna need more crit rate. So if you do switch that one unit, you probably have to rerun the whole team, because this is probably based on like super low crit rate on all of those units. But the main reason that I switched the Igar for a or I switched the Ken for an Igar is because you just have that one extra buff block in there that just helps out a little bit. But this dungeon is bound to fail as well. Like, this dungeon definitely does, like, if everyone just doesn't use their buff block, you're gonna lose. Simple as that. Like, you could add a lot of, like, people like to say, like, oh, just add more will runes to it, so there's blah, 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 that kind of stuff. No, if the boss starts taking turns and you don't land that buff block, how to English, then you're just gonna lose. That's as simple as it is. It's definitely nice if you have this run running where the Gina and the Zinc kill the whole wave, and that's the main thing that you should be aiming for. I have seen some people also put Sonya and Patrick to this. Oh, I do actually, wait, do I click on Patrick? Yeah, I do click on Patrick here. So that was even before we started using Patrick in PC. I did mention that Patrick in SF might be an interesting unit, and that's definitely a unit that if I were to run this again, I could give it a try of saying like, okay, maybe I give that a try if that's anything nice. I tried like a few different versions of this as well, but I would definitely say don't use this version, just simply use the version with the Igar. I think that's the best version out there. But is it going to fail a bunch of times here and there? Yeah, that's going to be the case. The event for this one that you can only select like one specific element, so you could say like only water or only fire or anything like that. I don't think it changes that much for this dungeon. Sure, you don't need as many light and darks. Kind of depends if your account is heavy LD, but in most cases I don't think it would be that heavy on LD. But I would say that this one is a little bit better split out, where everything is kind of useful, and in SF it's relatively easy to get like good artifacts in without too much trouble, and definitely a nice dungeon to farm for a lot of things. The only big issue that I don't like about farming this dungeon is that there's no good buff blocker that makes the run safe. Like, technically the safest unit in the game would be the Lizard Man, which is just making this whole run super slow, because that's the only buff blocker on passive that doesn't actually have to do any activation skill himself and then still land it. So I would say that's the only one that actually makes it super safe, but yeah, that's just making it super slow. So I don't really like to farm the dungeon for the sake that it does fail quite a bit. For the R5 team, which is also the current team that I'm running R5, it's the team with the perfect AI of buff block and perfect AI of armor break. And then we have Brandia killing the first half, Bale killing the second half. It's absolutely the best team out there. And I did even rune this for a few accounts that are way lower in rune quality. But as long as your Brandia one-shots on that first hit, and Brandia here does like 460k, she can do up to like 500 something. The first half of the boss, I think it's just like 350k HP. Also keep in mind that Ken does about like 100 to 120k as well. So Brandia only has to do about like 250k here. So you can miss like the buff block or anything like that. Or not the buff block, you can miss the branding. Armor break missing is a little bit more of an issue. But this is absolutely a very nice team. And the reason that I can rune this on lower rune quality is because the units on the right over here, the Arang, the Chami, but on this side also the Shihua, they don't even move in this run. They just move by team-ups, but they get full attack bar when the boss is dead. So they would still take a move over there if you make them tanky enough where they could survive and then they could clean up the whole thing. You can make this like a 24, 25, 26-second run, but it still works by the same mechanics the moment you upgrade the runes, because the main thing is the Bale has to be as strong as possible with crit damage from enemy mech or enemy low HP, and the more damage the Bale does, the faster the run will be. Would you say that the Deborah is a must over here? Deborah's not really a must. You could do this with a Miriam, but that does mean you need better runes. That's the main thing to it. You just need better runes to do that. Some people that don't have Chami was actually an HOH, but if you don't have Chami, I heard some people say that you could put Freya in the Chami spot and just let it die straight off, and then it's fine as well. I tried that a little bit myself, but it didn't really work out that well, and I just did like 3 runs, and I was like, okay, this doesn't work for me. I go back to the Chami because that does work for me. You could also place like a Soha or the Kami or something, but what's the other one? The dark one. You could probably place them in there, but I would definitely say that the Chami is a lot better. And oh wait, I think I've recognized here that my yeah, this thing was like out of sync. You have to make sure that everything is runed properly. So I had the wrong one over there, but I absolutely really love this R5 team, and it doesn't really get faster than this R5 team. So if you're looking towards an R5 team, this one is absolutely the recommended. So those are all of my dungeon teams except for the Rift Beast. For the Rift Beast, I currently use a very standard typical thing in here. However, there's one thing that I use for all Rift Beasts, and I do recommend you guys to run it up as well, is a Lucas. Lucas is just insanely strong by where he gets a shield, he gets the crit rate in, he does a lot of damage, he has armor breaks. It's just a very nice unit to use in all Rift Beasts, and it's definitely one of those units. Next to the eye guard, that can be, in this case, the eye guard bolt is not really recommended. I think I just did an auto select on it at some point because it was unruined, but just give it triple fights or that kind of stuff. So yeah, and then the other units are kind of just fillers of whatever is ruined for what I want to use, but at least keep like one AoE unit in there. And the main thing is you don't really want to go for the highest score, you just want to go for a fast clear. Like a fast clear in the end, the highest score gives you, arguably, from what they said themselves, better drop the rate, but I've been tracking a lot of those numbers. I haven't seen better drop rate from higher damage numbers, so which is actually kind of sad. It would be cool that a higher damage would actually also value a lot towards getting more legendaries, but it's not really the case. So for this one, I actually use a team of 4. The only thing is, like, normally I would like to use like a triple fight unit over here. I have a few of those triple fight units. I think this is one of those. Like a triple fight unit. However, this is the only boss that doesn't start with a damage skill, and therefore it doesn't necessarily work. So I do use this one. I think you might actually use one of the gargoyles right now, because the gargoyles start in a stone state as well. So one of the gargoyles that start in the stone state. So it will not be picked up by a team up, but I'm not entirely sure how that would work. Didn't really test that. Carbine is definitely a nice unit for this. Ikaru is definitely a nice unit for this. The Sonya is just whatever Sonya I have on the highest damage build that I use in Siege, so it's not really any particular like builds Sonya, it's just a Sonya that's built for Siege. And then we have this thing running in here as well, and that's giving me just the victories. And then I would say that this one is running about a minute, this one is running about like 45 to 50 seconds. This one is running a little bit faster. Wait, did I? Oh no, wait, I actually placed you in just because I had to do some achievements. Normally it's another slime over there. This one does run a little bit faster, and the Douglas over here could have been a Leica, could have been anything. I actually made it like full on damage, but I do like the Douglas or a Leica here in front because it just deals a lot of damage. So actually the only damage dealers are the Lucas and this thing, and then we have like 2 fight units over here, and this is running about 35 to 40-ish seconds. It does feel a little bit if I don't optimize the runes for it. So currently, I would have to put this one towards damage on wind. Like this one, I would always have to switch like the light artifact to go for the right damage. And this I probably have to put on triple fight as well, and also damage towards the right element for that one. Then we have the light one. Pretty similar style. Once again, we do have one of those units with triple fight over here. We have those units over there. And these are also just whatever units I found to do a lot of single target damage on light. And I just ruined them up. Most of the time, these units are ruined by Fatal, because Fatal, I do tend to have quite a lot of Fatal runes. So for that reason, I like to use the Fatal runes with a Fatal blade over here of like whatever. And this also runs like, I think like a 40-ish seconds or something. And the main thing is this unit dies off, and then it's just kind of fast from there. And this thing is somewhat of a similar set as well. We do have like one extra damage dealer. This one, this set is not optimized at all. Like I would have to probably put like a fatal set on this, like this much speed and that kind of stuff is not really that useful. But then you kind of see like the same unit. So the general units are like the Eiger, an Ikaru, and then Lucas. And then mostly it's like +1 or +2, and then these units that are slimes. That's mainly the main thing that I'm using for all of those. And it just gets a little bit faster where the runs, like this run, for example, is also like 35, 40 seconds. You could full optimize it and get like 25 to 30 second runs on these. That's absolutely possible. But since I don't run them too often and I don't really want to rerun to run them specifically, is the reason that I just have something that's semi-fast, that's semi on okay-ish runes, but these are like all runed at the same time, more or less, and ready to go. But I actually only run them the moment that the achievement asks me is like, oh, you should do a wind. That's the moment where I run them. So for that reason, they're kind of ruined up for that reason. So guys, that's all there is for all of my dungeon teams. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you as always in the next one. Definitely also check out all of the videos that are linked in the description, which are all the individual teams that you have seen today, except for the Rift Dungeons, because I don't really have videos for Rift Dungeons. If you want me to make videos on those Rift Dungeons specifically, maybe I'll go over that at some point and then kind of like optimize it and then show like each run and how it works when it works. Could probably do a video on that at some point. Besides that, definitely check out the Discord. It has all the playlists with all of those videos just nicely listed and that kind of stuff per dungeon. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab, which has the dungeon guide archive and the video guide archive, which contains all of the guides that you need. Hope to see you there.